Hello, my name is Andrew Lay, and I am one of the pastors at Keith Memorial United Methodist Church in Athens, Tennessee, and I'm also the author of the book Hope for the Holidays, exploring the message of hope in the Christmas story. The season of Advent and Christmas is really my favorite time of the year. There's just something about the season that I really love. I love Christmas trees and the ornaments. I love the Christmas lights and decorations. I love Christmas carols and the hymns that we sing. But the thing that I love most about this time of the year is what we are celebrating and the way that this season makes me feel. I love feeling the Christmas spirit centered around the celebration of the birth of Christ. Now, my wife Allie really gets into the Christmas spirit early on. My family growing up always waited until after Thanksgiving to put up our Christmas tree. But somehow Allie convinced me to put up our Christmas tree early last year. We were in the midst of COVID before the vaccine had come out, and we both just needed some Christmas cheer. And I have to say that I enjoyed our Christmas tree more last year than I had since I was probably a young child. And I know it seems silly, but it really felt like a sense of hope in a dark time. Little did Allie and I know that we would be spending Christmas 2020 in quarantine. And I have to say that there's nothing worse than a preacher in quarantine during Christmas. I was going crazy. Usually during the Christmas season, I'm busy. I'm at the church, running around nonstop. It's a busy time in the life of the church. I'm used to going and going and going. And I found myself having to stop all of a sudden. Couldn't go into the church. I couldn't preach my Christmas Eve sermon. Couldn't do all of those things that I love doing during this season. And so I had to do something with all of this energy penned up. So I started writing. And I started writing the sermons that I would have been preaching if I could have been at church. And it kind of morphed into this bigger project. And it turned into this book, this Advent devotional. And I had absolutely no intentions of actually publishing it, but my wife, Allie, really encouraged me to send it into a few publishers anyway. And so that's what I did. I sent it into a few small publishing companies, and then I completely forgot about it. Like seriously, completely forgot about it. And then I was completely shocked when Karis Publishing came back and told me that they were interested in publishing my book. And my mind first went to, oh great, my book is going to get published. And then I thought, oh no, my book is going to get published. This means that people might actually read it now. But one of the things that I really wanted to focus on in this book is the theme of hope. I can sometimes get frustrated when I'm looking for material for Advent sermon series because a lot of books and series that look at Christmas look at it like Christmas According to Scrooge or How the Grinch Stole Christmas, all these different things, or It's a Wonderful Life. And I love all of those movies and I love all of those things. But, in my book, I really wanted to focus on the traditional scriptures that we find from the Bible and how it's connected to this idea of hope. It's an old story. Many of us know these stories from heart. We've learned these stories growing up. We've heard these stories every year. But these old stories, I think, still speak to us. And so hope is really the center of this book. And I think that it's something that we desperately need. There's times when we feel like we are surrounded by experiences of pain and loss and suffering. And in the midst of these times, it can be hard for us to see any good. Over the past few years, we found ourselves in the midst of this global pandemic. On the news, we witness numerous accounts of violence and racism. We hear about school shootings and acts of terrorism. And we also experience times in our own lives personally when we are dealing with difficult and challenging things. And during these trying moments in life, it can be hard for us to experience that hope that is present in our lives. And this Christmas season is really, again, a time that is full and ripe of hope. In the Christmas season, we find hope knowing that Christ came to dwell with us, Emmanuel, which means God is with us. That's what we celebrate at Christmas, the Incarnation, the fact that Jesus came down to dwell among us, to live among us in the flesh. And we hold on to that hope that Christ will come again to make all things new. This understanding is what gives us hope, knowing that the brokenness and pain that exists in our world will one day be made right. We don't have to fend for ourselves. We are not helpless or hopeless. We're not alone. But God is with us. And so in this book, we will explore the ways that we experience hope for the holidays. In each chapter, we'll look at the different characters in the Christmas story and how they offer us messages of hope in our own lives. In chapter 1, we will focus on John the Baptist's message concerning the hope of salvation. In chapter 2, we will turn to the story of Joseph and the hope that he finds in the angel's message about the birth of Emmanuel. In chapter 3, we'll look at the hope for justice that Mary expresses in her song, the Magnificat. In chapter 4, we will explore the hope that is proclaimed to us by the shepherds and the hope that they find in the birth of the Christ child. In chapter 5, we will address the hope that is fulfilled through the wise men who visited Jesus. And then in the epilogue, we will revisit the hope that is made flesh in the incarnation of Jesus who dwells among us. My hope is that you will read this book during the season of Advent, that you will encounter this story in a fresh and new way. And as you read, may you explore this message of hope in the Christmas story, but may you also explore the message of hope in your own life as well. May you be filled with God's message of hope as you journey to Christmas. You can find my book on Amazon.com at Cokesbury. You can come by Keith Church and pick up a copy for $12. I also have an audiobook that's recorded on Audible, and I'm going to play just a clip of that following this video.
During the season of Christmas, we are invited to receive a message that is focused on the hope, peace, joy, and love of Christ. It's a special season when we are called to remember the Christ who came to us at Christmas and anticipate Christ's second coming. For many, Christmas is a time when we experience hope in circumstances that might seem hopeless. As we look around at our world, we see examples of racism, violence, and injustice, and we are reminded of our need for a Savior to come into the world and right all of our wrongs. We can turn on CNN or listen to NPR and find examples of injustice and oppression in the United States of America and around the world. We witness tragic and horrific events almost daily. I can think of several examples. On February 14, 2018, a gunman entered Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. The shooter, a 19-year-old man, opened fire with a semi-automatic rifle, killing 17 people. This tragic event marked the deadliest high school shooting in United States history. On May 25, 2020, the world was shocked by the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis, Minnesota. George Floyd was accused of buying cigarettes with a counterfeit $20 bill. In response to the call, 3 police officers pinned Floyd down for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. One of these officers had his knee lodged against Floyd's throat, which cut off his air supply, causing his death. On January 6, 2021, as the House and Senate were voting to certify the results of our 2020 presidential election, we witnessed throngs of people storm past the police and into the United States Capitol building. They tussled with officers in full riot gear, broke into the chambers, and entered governmental offices. They carried Confederate flags and were adorned with Nazi symbols. 5 people died because of this domestic terrorist attack. We are in need of a Savior. We need Christ to bring hope to the world. In our pain and suffering, we find hope in the coming of Christ. In the message of Jesus' birth we receive, as the Christmas hymn, O Holy Night says, a thrill of hope. The weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn.